Morning, family. I know we are in 20 this week, right? And we're finishing up 20, the book. Well, I was just no. We're I know it's finishing up the book, but we were at 20 because the last time I was with you all, we were talking about the resolve to punish the guilty. You remember that? And we asked. Someone asked what was mitzvah. Remember? And we kind of went over that, and we were going back and forth with what mitzvah meant. And so I did some research so that I could clarify what mitzvah meant. And it's a commandment, yes. And I wanted to talk about when we see things, first mentions of things, like when we just what we just went through today with our sermon, or what was exhorted to us today. First mentions. So when you see certain things, it's not the first time it's happened, because as you know, we're like in the middle of the book, not in the middle of Torah right now. We've gone through Genesis and Exodus and Leviticus and Numbers and Deuteronomy, and now we're in Judges, and then Joshua, and now we're in Judges, and then we're going into First. I think no, we're going into Ruth, and then so the in the book, the Bible is observable, and everything that we look at, there should be evidence to back it up. And so, to gain a righteous understanding, we have to divide the word of truth from what it means from the surface, hidden deep in the spiritual meaning. So, the sons of Israel, we've seen that in the beginning too. It says, "And all the sons of Israel," and so that we don't get that misconstrued, all the sons of Israel mean uh, the descendants of who was called Israel. Jacob, he was called Israel. He was renamed Israel. So all of these are sons from his loins. So these are his descendants at this point, the nation of Israel. So all the sons got together after this atrocity had been the murder of the Levite's wife, or the concubine. Um, and he called them, as we talked about the 12 parts of her, about her being cut up into 12 pieces and dispersed amongst the members of the nation. That was also called to witness. That was, excuse me, mitzvah. We said mitzvah meant a command, and we were pondering over that. So when I went into deeper study, mitzvah meant to it was a covenant. And the first mention of mitzvah we see in Genesis 31:52. Let's get to that. I missed one before then too, and I'll get to that one too. But this is written bolder, and then I'll get to the other one. 31:52. And we know that in 31:52, it says, "This heap is a witness," or mitzvah, is a witness, and the pillar is a witness that I will not pass by this heap to do you harm, and you will not pass by this heap and this pillar to do me harm. And the Elohim of Abraham and the Elohim of Nahor and the Elohim of the fathers, this is 53, judge between us. So Yaakov swore by the fear of his father Isaac. Then Yaakov offered a sacrifice on the fire and called his kinsmen to the meal, and they ate the meal and spent the night on the mountain. And early in the morning Laban arose and kissed his sons and his daughters and blessed them. Then Laban departed and returned to his place. So we know, if we were to read 22, 31:22, then it was told to Laban that on the third day that Jacob had fled, and he took his kinsmen with him and pursued him in a distance for 7 days' journey and overtook him in the hill country. And Yah came to Laban the Aramean in a dream at night and said to him, "Be careful that you do not speak to Jacob either good or bad." So Yah warned him. He was pursuing Jacob because in 31, the beginning, Jacob secretly leaves Canaan because he knows, okay, hey, you've been dealing unfairly with me. If I say, hey, if I served you, I served you with all my strength, and I served you, and you cheated me. You changed my wages 10 times. Yah did not allow you to hurt me though. So he's like, at this point, if it had been up to you, you would have, I would have left with nothing. So I left, and now you're pursuing me. So in this pursuit, because he doesn't trust him, and he, of course, because Laban had been dealing with him unfair, he said, okay, so here, this covenant is between you and I, and we call Yah to witness. So mitzvah is calling Yah to peer in, because a mitzvah is a tower or a monument that's built. And so you see when cities are fortified, they're fortified and the towers are high because someone has to look out and down and see who's coming or witness who's coming and then warn everybody else. So a mitzvah is you asking Yah in the presence of your congregation, the men or the women, to peer in to this covenant that you're making and judge it righteously. So that's what a mitzvah is. So when we think of like the bar mitzvah, you're asking Yah to peer in and look at what I've been teaching this child. And I've called others in my family to witness what I've been teaching. And then now hold me accountable for what it is I'm about to do. Family and Elohim. So that's what mitzvah means. So we think about it's monumental. So we think of ceremonies. We think of weddings. You're calling your family, your loved ones, those in to peer in and to be accountable, hold me accountable for the vows that I'm taking, and to be a witness as well, and before Yah and man, to hold me accountable for what I'm doing, and then to judge. So you're asking him to witness what it is, the swearing in of offices, leaders, family, community. When we come in as teachers, we are under the observation of the Father as well, because we are held accountable, and others are to hold us accountable. That's why we need to be in our word. When we stumble on these words, we don't just kind of haphazardly move past them, because you want to hold me accountable, and then you're accountable too, because you don't want to just stand here and let me tell you anything. So we do that. That's what the mitzvah is. And anybody that does not want to be held accountable is kind of taking on the spirit of Cain. You don't want to be held accountable, so I'll be turned over to myself. We don't want that. So we talked about the first mentions, but the first mention we'll look at Genesis, I believe it is 15:10, where this is just always, I think this is on this day, yes, Yah made a covenant. But I'm looking for the one where Yah said that, so he promised Abram a son. And he says, don't fear, do not fear, Abraham. I am a shield to you. Your reward shall be very great. And then he told him, this man heirs, I believe it is 15:10. But he bring me a 3-year-old heifer and a 3-year-old female goat and a 3-year-old maternal dove. Then he brought all these to him and cut them in two and laid them each half opposite of each other. But he did not cut the birds. And I'm looking for the one where he swore by himself, basically. And I thought that was the scripture, but it's not. I'm going to find it, though. Genesis 31:15. Because Yah swore by himself, because he saw no one greater to swear by. He couldn't find another witness, so he swore by himself, which is a powerful thing when you can swear by yourself and you can witness to yourself that you're going to uphold the promise that you have, the promise that you promised. And so Genesis 31:13 says, I am Yahuwah of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar, where you made a vow to me. Now arise, leave this land, and return to the land of your birth. So in his dream, the reason why Yaakov left, messenger of Yahuwah said to him in a dream, here I am, and told him to go. Lift up your eyes and see the male goats. And he told him about the striped and the speckled. And he told him about the promise that he had made to him. So we see this mitzvah in different instances. So that is what the mitzvah is. And so after the mitzvah, you see all of the brothers, the sons, congregating together. And that was something else I wanted to add. We asked about the household idols. Remember that we were talking about household idols and the period. So basically, household idols are things that you learned at home. You know that when you leave your father's house or mother's house, you go and you cleave to your mate. But when we leave our old ways, we're to leave all of those things behind and we go to our father's house. We come to his house to and we rid ourselves of the superstitions. So those are it was translated as teraphim. And so the Saint Josephs that used to sell the houses, Saint Christopher to protect travelers, Lady of Guadalupe, or the nativities, and all these little trinkets and these little Buddhas, we leave all of those things behind because we are coming to our Father's house to unlearn, unlearn all the things that we picked up in the world. We come to His house. We leave the superstitions. There's a, don't put my purse on the floor, don't sweep my feet. You know, all of those things. And we know that the menorah is it stands as a to be commemorated or to stand as a remembrance. It's like the mitzvah is a tower to stand as commemorating the witnessing of us calling Yah to look in on what we're doing. And Yah, we know that Yah established the nation of Israel. And so he gave them laws, statutes, and commandments. And so we talked about that where all heck is broken loose and now we like, oh wow, it always takes something tragic to happen for us to come together and say, you know what, we've been kind of walking wrong. And at this point, we look at it in verse 5 where it says, on 3, when the sons of Benjamin, which are also, these people are all related, let's not forget that. So we tend to forget that we're all connected. They're all connected. Their forefather or they are all from the loins of Jacob, which is Israel. And the sons of Benjamin, the sons of Israel, have gone up to Mitzpah. And the sons of Israel said, tell us how this wickedness has taken place. And so basically when we look at this in verse 4, they want to know, well, what is this wickedness or how did this happen? Well, we know that in the beginning of the last chapter, I believe it is, 19, it says, now it came about in those days where there was no king in Israel, and there was a certain Levite staying in a remote part of the hill country of Ephraim, who took a concubine for himself from Bethlehem in Judah. Well, we see here that in Deuteronomy 19, 17 and 19, it says, let's look at it because I want to say it right. There first mentions again because they want to know how did this wickedness take place. Well, we're going to show you how this wickedness took place because there was no kings in Israel at the time and there was nobody judging. And so what happened? Deuteronomy, let's see, 17. Let me make sure it's 17. Yeah, right here, 17:17. He says, these are the laws now. These are the things that Yah is telling them you shall not do. He says this in 14. He says, when you enter into the land which Yahuwah your Elohim gives you, and you possess it and live in it, you shall say, and you will say, and you say, I will set a king over me like all the nations who are around me. So he's already telling them what they're going to do. When I get you in the land, you're going to still rubberneck over here and say, I want to be like this other nation who is around me. You shall surely set a king over you, whom among Yahuwah chooses, one from among your countrymen, who shall set as king over yourselves, and you may not put a foreigner over yourself who is not of your country. So that's what he's telling them. You're going to do it, but these are the guidelines to stay within. So they're asking, how did this take place? Because y'all stepped out the boundaries. So he says in 16, moreover, you shall not multiply horses for himself. You shall not, Nor shall he cause the people to return to Israel to multiply horses, since Yahuwah has said to you, you shall never again return that way. So we know that Egypt is bondage. You don't do what Egypt did, because you see what I did to Egypt. They were mighty, right? They had multiplied horses and um, fortitude and military might, and I whooped them with pestilence. I whooped them with the small things people don't even pay attention to, but annoying. Verse 17 says, neither shall he multiply wives for himself, lest his heart turn away, nor shall he greatly increase silver and gold for himself. So basically, he's telling them, like, okay, Levites, you're not supposed to multiply wives. What did this Levite do? He had a concubine, and you traveled with her. So there's cause and effect all the way around the board. These things are happening because you did this, and then this happened, and because you broke the commandments, first of all, because it says don't covet. So then, would the sons of Benjamin do what? They forgot Torah too, because they coveted. They wanted the other man's wife. Well, they wanted the other man, and then they ended up getting the wife, and that's what it says right here. He said, "Have him come out." He wanted, yeah, they wanted the man. And 19 in the end, he said, verse 19 and 22. He said they were making merry, and he told the men of the city were surrounding the house, pounding on the door, acting like they were in Sodom and Gomorrah. And they asked the owner of the house, said, bring out the man who came into your house, that we may have relations. They didn't say we wanted to play football. We don't want to. That's what he said. So then the man said, don't do this, don't commit this act of folly. They had returned, they had stepped all the way out of Torah. So what they're asking, what is this wickedness? Well, this wickedness, or this Ra, you'll find that in your Hebrew Strongs, 7451, which is Ra, which is Resh and Ayin. You'll see that this existence of wickedness there because you've walked away from Torah or truth. So,
I have a question for you.
yes.
You said they went up to Mitzpah, but how do you spell that? Because mine says M-I-Z-P-A-H.
Yes.
Town,
Mitzpah. It's a town, and it's also it's the highest peak. So then they go up.
I have a good chance that Mitzpah is the man, but it's spelled, is this town named after that?
Mitzvah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yep, it's a command. Mitzvah is a command, but this is what it represents. So they assembled one man as to Yahuwah at Mitzvah, which is a country, a hill country, and it's high. So it also, there's always observable evidence, and there's all, yes, exactly. Yep. So the mitzvah, but it's the root of it is derived from this, and it's crazy how it has a mentioning, including the land, the country. So we're gonna jump around. I want to deal with that. So that's 21 through 5. I want to deal with, and then so we talked about what mitzvah meant. Then it says and he talked about taking the concubine in 6, 7, and 8. They talked about now we'll go into his tent and return to the house. So they were going up to Benjamin to deal with the situation, because I think where we left out, they were starting the civil war. So they had come in 10, and they took 10 men out of 100 throughout the tribe of Israel, and 100 out of 1,000, and 1,000 out of 10,000 to supply food for the people. So they were preparing for war, because now we have to go take care of the situation. And then we see something very again, that has a first mention in Deuteronomy again. When you go into war, how you offer peace first. So they go in, and they go into to Gibeah of Benjamin, for the people to come to Gibeah of Benjamin, and that they may punish them for all the disgraceful acts that they've committed in Israel. Thus all the men of Israel were gathered against in the city, united as one man. In verse 12. Then the tribes of Israel sent men through the entire tribe of Benjamin, saying, what is this wickedness again that is taking place among you? Now, deliver up the men, the worthless fellows of Gibeah, that we may put them to death and remove this wickedness from amongst us, from Israel. But the sons of Benjamin would not listen to the voice of their brothers, the sons of Israel. So we see there is a crime that was committed, and it has affected the whole community. And so now the crime is is worthy of punishment. And so we want the people that are held accountable. So again, if we don't deal with the person that did this, then Mitzvah, we're asking Yah to look in righteously. Now we're all guilty because we know that he committed this act of murder, which is a crime. It's not killing, it's murder. Killing is one thing you defend in your life. Murdering is acting out of your own ill intent, your heart, anger, wrath, disobedience. So we see in verse 12, they're asking for these people to be held accountable. And we know that all nations is only as strong as their laws and their leadership. So leadership is important, and keeping the laws are important, and having laws are important. And again, we know that in the Hebraic, evidence is observation. There should be observational evidence, and it is evidence that all men had returned to their own way and did what was right in their own eyes. And again, we know that's Jeremiah 17:19, where your heart is deceitful and desperately wicked. And people say, oh, yeah, I know my heart. I'm just doing this. No, you do. He told you that is deceitful and desperately wicked. It'll fool you. And you'll think you're doing right until you end up in chaos. And then you're like, oh, help me. So we look at the word to death, put to death. And in your Hebrew Strongs, we know that word is muth. And it means to die or to kill it, to get rid of it, to purge it, or to silence this act or this behavior. We have to silence these. We know that is crazy too. When you think about our judicial system now, you see people that commit acts of grotesque acts against children are allowed to live, and then you get somebody that sells drugs and goes to prison for life. Not that wrong is wrong, but one is a conscious choice where I choose to use drugs. That's my choice. But as a child, I don't choose to get here. Now I'm with people that I'm relying on to give me nurturing and care and protection, and then these people violate me. So the people who are sick need to die, because now I'm going to create a cycle. And you know what I mean? Then this is where these cycles come from, is because somebody who's already demented in their mind performs this act on this child, and then it's cyclical unless somebody breaks the cycle or kills it, or Yah intervenes and that child or that person is strong enough with therapy and help to get okay. So we see here, we have all these arguments against capital punishment. Oh, you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that. But Yah is the one who first instituted. It's death. Capital punishment was a law given by Yah. He said, remove the wickedness from Israel. You see it in all the way from Deuteronomy 17 through chapter 17 through chapters 34, and what is supposed to be done. And I'll just go over a few of them. In 17, he has city of refuge, and he says, and he talks about the evil people who do evil in the sight of Yahuwah, and if it's found in your midst in the towns, that Yahuwah has given you a man or a woman who does evil in the sight of Yahuwah, your Elohim, by transgressing his covenant, and has gone and served other elves and worshipped them or the sun or the moon or the heavenly host, and which I have not commanded. And if it is told to you and you have heard it, And it says, with the evidence of two witnesses or three witnesses, he who is he who is to die shall be put to death. He shall be put to death with the evidence of the witness. And the witness is very, very important, because that's why it says don't bear false witness. Because now if I lie on you and cause you to be murdered, I'm just as guilty as the person that stoned and killed you. Now I have to die, because we talk about right here in um, 19, where we talk about the cities of refuge and the avenger of blood. So there's an avenger of blood. There is someone who is to take care of the person, the kinsman redeemer. You killed, I have to kill you, and the blood is on your hand when you when you bear false witness. So innocent blood will not be shed, because Yah will not, which Yah who the in the midst of the land which Yahuwah your Elohim gives you as an inheritance, and blood guiltiness will be upon you, you lying. Don't be bearing false witness and false testimonies. And then so it says, remove the wickedness from the land in which Yahweh is giving you, because um, he will utterly destroy you, the land, and all that things if you allow wickedness to consist. And then we see in verse um, 14, so the men of Benjamin gathered and go to Gibeah. So basically they went to them in peace. They asked for the ones that are guilty, and they did not adhere. And so then war was waged. And so on the cities of that day, the sons of Benjamin were numbered 26,000 who draw the sword, besides the inhabitants of Gibeah, who were numbered as 700 choice men. Out of all these people, 700 choice men were left-handed. Each one could sling a stone at a hair and not miss. Then the men of Israel, besides Benjamin, were numbered 400,000 men who drew the sword. All of these were men of war. So 18. Now the sons of Israel arose and went up to Bethel and inquired of Yah and said, who shall go up first for us to battle against the sons of Benjamin? And then we see in 19, so the son, and then, 18, I'm sorry. Then Yahuwah said, Judah shall go up first. We see them going in with counsel. Before you go to war, there should be wise counsel given and asked upon. And we see the men here, although they knew there, it was commanded of them to purge the evil from the land, they sought counsel as well, and they sought counsel from who? Yahuwah. So they inquired. They said, who shall go up? And Yah said, Judah first. We saw the first mention of that as well when you look in, I believe it is, again, in Deuteronomy, where it says, Judah shall go up first in war. Judah would march out first. The laws of warfare. 20. So in 20 we see the laws of warfare. It says, when you go out to battle against your enemies and see horses and chariots and people more numerous than you, do not be afraid of them, for Yahuwah your Elohim, who's brought you out of the land of Egypt, is with you. Now it shall come about that when you are approaching the battle, the priest shall come near and speak to the people. And you shall say to them, Hear, O Israel, you are approaching the battle against your enemies today. Do not be faint-hearted, do not be afraid or panic or tremble before them. For Yahuwah your Elohim is the one who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies, to save you. And then when the officers speak to the people, saying, Who is the man that has built a new house and has not dedicated it? Let him depart and return to his house, and let him, lest he die in the battle of another man dedicated. So we're talking about the man who hasn't dedicated his house. It's a man who has not had any children. If you've been married and probably your first and second year, and your wife, you have no seed to carry on the house, more than likely if you're going into battle, you very likely that you can die. So he said, let him go back home. So there are laws and rules of engagement. And so talked about the man who was not married, the man who was faint-hearted, go home. He says, however, when you go into the city, it shall come about if you agree to make peace. Oh, 9, sorry. And it shall come about when the officers have finished speaking to the people that they shall appoint commanders of armies and the head of the people. And when you approach a city to fight against it, you shall offer it terms of peace. We saw that happen too. Okay, where are these men? It says it was 700 of them. Give us the 700 so we don't have to fight. But they wanted to protect the 700, so then they all ended up fighting with one another. And so they didn't want to make peace. And he says, then if they don't want to make peace, then you shall strike all the men in the city with the edge of the sword. Um, we see here also when they said, okay, so who shall go up? So then it was inquired about who should go out first. And he said Judah. And we seen that when we looked at the design of the tabernacle. We know that east, Judah sat at the east of the gate. And it's so funny when you look at first mentions, what does east mean? Well, we know that the Garden of Eden was east. And east is Kedem, or from antiquity, or the beginning, or from old, or aforetime. So they always go out first. Judah marched out first. So, and then the rest of the tribes follow. You have each gate and the entrance and how it went out. And so, 19. So the sons of Israel arose in the morning and camped against Gibeah, and the men of Israel went out to battle against Israel, and the men of Israel arrayed for battle against them in Gibeah. Then the sons of Benjamin came out of Gibeah and fell to the ground on that day, 22,000 men of Israel. But the men of Israel encouraged themselves and arrayed for battle again in the place where they had arrayed themselves the first day. And the sons of Israel went up and they wept before Yahuwah until evening and inquired again of Yahuwah, saying, shall we again draw near for battle against the sons of my brother Benjamin? And Yahuwah said, go up again against him. And so you see that this failure to resolve this atrocity and to give up these men that had committed it caused them to have to fights amongst the brethren. And it's sad, and it grieved him. So you see it grieved him because he says it right here. But the people encouraged themselves, and they arrayed for battle in the place, and they inquired again against Yah. With Yah and says, shall we continue to fight against our brother? Yeah, you have to purge the evil from the land. Then the sons of Israel came against the sons of Benjamin the second time. And Benjamin went out against them from Gibeah the second day and fell to the ground again, 18,000 men of the sons of Israel. All of these drew the sword. Then all the sons of Israel and all the people went up and came to Bethel and wept. Thus they remained there before Yah and fasted that day until evening. And they offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before Yahuwah. So we know that Yah gave them success in the battle, and they offered peace offerings, and they sacrificed, and they worshiped before him, burnt offerings. And the sons of Israel inquired of Yahuwah before the ark of the covenant of Yahuwah was there in those days. And Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, Aaron's son, stood before him to minister in those days, saying, shall I yet again go out to battle against the sons of my brother Benjamin, or shall I cease? And Yahuwah said, go up, for tomorrow I will deliver them into your hands. So Israel set ambush in around Gibeah. The sons of Israel went up against the sons of Benjamin on the third day, and arrayed themselves against Gibeah as at other times. And the sons of Benjamin went out against the people, and were drawn away from the city, and they began to strike and kill some of the people as at other times on the highways, one in which goes up to Bethel, and the other to Gibeah, and in the field, about 30 men of Israel. And the sons of Benjamin said, they are struck down before us, as at the first. But the sons of Israel said, let us flee, that we may draw them away from the city to the highways. Then all the men of Israel rose from their place and arrayed themselves at Baal Tamar. And the men of Israel in ambush broke out of their place, even out of Meribah. And we have to look up what that means too. When 10,000 choice men from all Israel came against Gibeah, the battle became fierce. But Benjamin did not know that disaster was close to them. And Yahuwah struck Benjamin before Israel, so that the sons of Israel destroyed 25,100 men of Benjamin that day, all who draw the sword. So the sons of Benjamin saw that they were defeated. When the sons of Israel gave ground to Benjamin because they relied on the men in the ambush whom they had set against Gibeah. The men in ambush hurried and rushed against Gibeah, and the men in ambush also deployed and struck all the city with the edge of the sword. Now the appointed sign between the men of Israel and the men in ambush was that they should make a great cloud of smoke rise from the city. Then the men of Israel turned in battle, and Benjamin began to strike and kill about 30 men of Israel. For they said, surely they are defeated before us, as in the first battle. But when the cloud began to rise from the city in a column of smoke, Benjamin looked behind him, and behold, the whole city was going up in smoke to heaven. Then the men of Israel turned, and the men of Benjamin were terrified, for they saw the disaster was close to them. Therefore they turned their backs before the men of Israel towards the direction of the wilderness. But the battle overtook them, while those who came out of the cities destroyed them in the midst of them. They surrounded Benjamin, pursued them without rest, and trod them down opposite Gibeah towards the east. Thus 18,000 men of Benjamin fell. All of these were valiant warriors. The rest turned and fled towards the wilderness to the rock of Rimmon. But they caught 5,000 of them on the highway and overtook them at Gidom, and killed 2,000 of them. So all of Benjamin who fell that day were 25,000 men who drew the sword. All of these were valiant warriors. But 600 men turned and fled toward the wilderness to the rock of Rimmon, and they remained at the rock of Rimmon 4 months. The men of Israel then turned back against the sons of Benjamin and struck them with the edge of the sword, both the entire city and the cattle and all they found. They also set on fire all the cities which they found. So we know that, what does fire do?
It burns it all up.
Consumes, right, cleanse. So that was the sign, basically, of the city, that is all gone. We've conquered and purged the city of the sin, and this is the witness who will burn it down. If you burn something down, you can't live there. Right? Oh, I know Jill's had 2 house fires. They're horrible. Horrible. Even when they call it the restoration, people, when they try to like clean your drapes or clean your clothes, and said, please, you cannot save anything. Oh, I've had things that I thought could be saved and had a coat. I tried to hold it. Just like, I don't know why when the fire comes, it contaminates as well. There's evidence that fire has been somewhere, because I would try to wear that coat and it would rain. You could smell the house fire. You could smell the fire coming out. I was like, I'm just going to throw this coat away. I could smell the fire. It's horrible. It's a smell you never forget. And it's so crazy that when you think about it, it's like, wow. Yep, the fire is going to cleanse, or you're going to know that there was that it happened. There's evidence of a purging or something being destroyed happened there. So, 21. Let's see if there was something else I wanted to add to this. So we just see that in our oaths and in our mitzvahs, the things that we do, walking this walk, we are held accountable. We called Yah in to witness what it is we're doing as we dedicated ourselves to Him in this walk. Even as a nation, there some people will fall off or try to go their own way. But we see something here too in 47. He always leaves a remnant. because there are still people that say they are from the tribe of Benjamin, and they couldn't be that Benjamin was completely destroyed, because there is a remnant still here. And who knows? Okay, we know they did, because they ran off and they hid in the wilderness in the rocks, and they must have repented. What we see in 21 as we continue on. Now the men of Israel had sworn in Mitzvah, saying, none of us shall give our daughters to Benjamin in marriage. They swore in Mitzvah, in covenant, that they weren't going to give their daughters in marriage to any of the men in Benjamin. So the people came to Bethel. What happened if you don't give your women to the men? No seed will be produced, none of them, but then they will go off and have children somewhere else. And again, what do we introduce when we have children? By people who don't keep Torah. Then you introduce other practices and beliefs, and I don't know how, all of us can't say that, but I personally, and I like to deal with myself anyway, because don't nobody know my business like me, I'm guilty of it. You know what I mean? I am guilty of, you have children by people who don't have the same beliefs or family practices, or same family, don't have the same close-knit family. So you have a family, a child, you start a family with a child have a family with a person who comes from dysfunction. And then they introduce or try to bring in the dysfunction from their family, and it is chaos, or even, it's horrible.
When we went onto the sibling group at once, 4 and 7 years old, and
Yes, just confusion. It brings about so much. You have to split your kids, and you have to, one weekend the child's here, and then you got to unlearn the stuff they learn this way, and those things are still being implemented, and no matter how you go back and have to recorrect and redirect those little, and it's, for some reason kids they can pick up the darndest things, and it's always the stuff that you don't want them to know, don't want them to hear. They act like, it's like, oh my goodness, but you didn't hear. Yes, it is. And so, in verse 2, so the people came to Bethel and sat there before Yahuwah until evening, and lifted up their voices and wept bitterly. So they're lamenting and mourning, and it is grievous when you war at anything, at all costs, but especially when there's war within the family. And so we see history here. We've had civil wars here. We had a civil war over one Confederate's belief versus another one, and all of them had came. And we talk about Confederate. When we talk about Confederate, it means a group of people who've united and say that they agree on all the terms, and then at some point somebody doesn't, or they find a loophole or something that we didn't quite observe intently, and now we need to fix this. And then, bravados and pride, and at the base of all of confusion is pride. Somebody won't say sorry, somebody won't say I was wrong, somebody won't say something, and so now you have all of this aggression and these apprehensive behaviors and all this stuff going on. And they, in verse 3, it says, and they said, why, O Yahuwah, Elohim of Israel, has this come about in Israel, so that one tribe should be missing today of Israel? And why? We can go back to the beginning, because you forgot the laws, statutes, and commandments. Everybody started doing what they was wanting to do, and then when this murder took place, now everybody's zapped back into reality, like, oh, we tiptoed too far away from Torah. That's basically what is happening. We tiptoe away, and everybody went about living as if they had their own, that they governed their self, and knowing that we fall under higher accountability, and that is to Yah. He is the lawmaker, and no matter what, And so it came about the next day that the people arose early and built an altar there and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings. Then the sons of Israel said, who is there among all the tribes of Israel who did not come up in the assembly of Yahuwah? For they had taken a great oath concerning him who did not come up to Yahuwah at Mitzvah, saying, he shall surely be put to death. And the sons of Israel were sorry for their brother Benjamin and said, one tribe is cut off from Israel today. What shall we do for wives for those who are left? Since we have sworn by Yahuwah not to give them any of our daughters in marriage. So basically, in Mitzvah, they talked about the brothers who didn't come up from the assembly, and that was, they'd be put to death. And so also death physically, and then death of the entire name, because if there are no women and no women given from the tribes, and you know you're supposed to get the women from the tribes of your family, uh, or like-minded, the generation dies, or the seed dies, or the teachings or the understanding dies, and you see that, you see the evidence of all of that now. So there were provisions made, and they said, what one is there of the tribes of Israel who did not come up to Yahuwah at Mitzvah? Excuse me. And behold, no one had come to the camp from Jabesh Gilead to the assembly. For when the people were numbered, behold, not one of the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead was there. And the congregation sent 12,000 of the valiant warriors there, and commanded them, saying, go and strike the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead with the edge of the sword, with the women and the little ones. And this is the thing that you shall do. You shall utterly destroy every man and every woman who is laid with a man. We'll get to that in a minute. And they found among the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead 400 young virgins who had not known a man by lying with him. And they brought them to the camp at Shiloh, which is in the land of Canaan. Then the whole congregation sent word and spoke of the sons of Benjamin to the sons of Benjamin, who were at the rock of Rimmon, and proclaimed peace to them. And Benjamin returned at the time, and they gave them the women whom they had kept alive from the women of Jabesh Gilead, yet they were not enough for them. And the people were sorry for Benjamin, because Yahuwah had made a breach in the tribes of Israel. Then the elders of the congregation said, what shall we do for wives for those who are left, since the women are destroyed out of Benjamin? And they said, there must be an inheritance for the survivors of Benjamin, that a tribe may not be blotted out from Israel. But we cannot give them wives from of our daughters. So the sons of Israel had sworn again, saying, cursed is he who gives a wife to Benjamin. So they said, behold, there's a feast of Yahuwah from year to year in Shiloh, which is on the north side of Bethel, on the east side of the highway that goes up from Bethel to Shechem, and on the south side of Lebanon, Lebona. And they commanded the sons of Benjamin, saying, go and lie in wait in the vineyards, and watch. And behold, if the daughters of Shiloh come out to take part in the dances, then you shall come out to the vineyards, and each of you shall catch his wife from the daughters of Shiloh, and go to the land of Benjamin. And it shall come about, when their fathers or their brothers come to complain to us, that we shall say to them, give them to us voluntarily, because we did not take for each man of Benjamin a wife in battle, nor did you give them to them, else you would now be guilty. And the sons of Benjamin did so, and took wives according to their numbers, for those who danced, whom they carried away. And they went and returned to their inheritance, and rebuilt the cities and lived in them. And the sons of Israel departed from there at that time, every man of his tribe to his tribe, and each one of them went out from there to his inheritance. In those days there was no king. Again, 25. In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes, and we saw that. So the festival that probably took place was Passover, of course, and so it was unsettled, and only once a year. But is that only the man can catch a wife? Yeah, how do you catch her, right? So you catch her, you're gonna take her. But something that stood out to me was why do you think they had women that were virgins and not women that had already been with men? And then also, it would probably be said that they were committing adultery if they took a woman that had been with a man. Oh, but not left if her husband was dead. But then, how can a woman love you if you've murdered her husband? So then you see the animosity that would take place. So then we have to have the virgins and not women that have been with men, because women tend to have an allegiance to a man that she's been with. So we'll take the. So just a mess. It's a lot. Also, so we know there were 600 men, there were 400 virgins, so yeah, it wasn't enough. So they needed 200 more girls. And so they come up with a clever little idea so that Benjamin wouldn't be blotted out. We're going to catch 200 women at Passover. But they had an oath. And so they said they weren't going to give their daughters to them, so you got to catch them.
Yeah.
So we're going to just craftiness. Yeah, grab one. Yes. My goodness. Yeah, it's something. And we see history as we speak right now, how we get to the places we are. The daughters of Israel, the sons of Israel, Benjamin, and how we curse ourselves because of lack of obedience. Is there any questions anyone has? No. We all know what mitzvah is. The first mentions of things. I thought that was pretty neat. That you can always go back. Yep. Mitzvah. You can find that in your Hebrew Strongs. 4707. It's a watchtower. So we're a observatorium, so we know that cities, high walls, towers. The primitive root is Safa in Mitzvah, and you see that in your Hebrew Strong 6822. And it means, Safa means to lean forward, to peer into a distance, or to observe, behold, or look, or keep watch. So mitzvah means to keep watch, and you would keep watch on a high mountain or on a high tower. And so it's not just coincidental.
No, mankind is always making a mess of stuff because they did what they want. There were no judges, so they did whatever they wanted. And yet the Father was still able to keep them straight, or to keep his,
It's so
bloodline
right for to go right, and it's so like man to do that too. I mean, it's so like human nature to kind of go off on your own, on your own, until trouble hits and it's like, ooh, it's too big for me. I need some help. Yeah, somebody. Yes, we do that, and it's just in his love for us that he even hears us, because again, we are in covenant with him. We're in mitzvah. We are in covenant. We are in our blood covenant, and he's still peering in, and just when it looks like we probably on the last, it's about to be done and over for it. It seems like he comes right in the nick of time, and there's resolving. It's not without consequence or punishment, but his punishment you can endure. You know what I mean? He doesn't turn you, because if he turned us over to our enemy, and we think about that, we have a real enemy. Hasatan is, if he could have his way with us, it would be to no recovery. And Yah still, in his mercy, still allows chastening, but not to crush us, not to destroy us, but always for reconciliation, restoration, And that is why he corrects us, and that's why he still gives us a chance. Because if he didn't want there to be any redemption, he would just kill us when the punishment happens. But when he leaves you alive, and there's room for repentance and restitution to be paid and reconciliation, and that is his plan. It's always for reconciliation. And so that's why we have to think about too when we are admonishing one another, and not admonishing when we're trying to correct, or we asking y'all to come and correct, that we purge and check our hearts too. Walk circumspect, check our hearts, and really ask him to deal with us first. Because a lot of times we can deflect. We could appoint ourselves. We can put ourselves have a soapbox agenda and not think about what it is we're doing. We can get so caught up in something and end up being guilty as well, in our trying to prove our points. So we know sorrow and tribulation are necessary, and we also know that it is the breaking of something. Is where the contents come out. You'll get good and bad. The bad will purge the bad, and as well as see the good and be restored. And that is the whole entirety of this walk and being a congregation, is being a hive, being witnesses one to another, holding each other accountable, but again, all in love, and never to crush or to, because a brother offended, it's harder to win it's easier to build a city than a brother offended. You know what I mean? Tear down a wall, you can build a wall back up, but you offend a brother to the point, and unrighteously, or even not in love, you offend a brother. It's hard to go back and restore that. So we have to think about those things, brother or sister. We have to remember to love on one another, and remember, we all are capable of the same thing. Yeah, falling. That's the story of man, woman. That's what we after the fall. And no one is worthless in the kingdom. Everyone has a place. Everyone has and it takes it is made. The kingdom is made up of all personalities, all personality types, people from all walks, from all place decisions we've made. Some good, some bad, some ugly ones. It's just which one you gonna tell, because we can do good at covering up some stuff. And sometimes your sins just tell on you. Just, lifestyles tell on you. But hallelujah, that he still loves us and still saves a remnant, and still, he doesn't disqualify us because of what we've done. Oh yeah, well, he chastises you. Yes. Because if he doesn't, then you're not one of his. You're not corrected. If you're not corrected, and have you noticed that children that are corrected, they love you, they love the parents, especially when it's not abuse. Even some abused children they still long for the love or desire from the parent. They're wanting love, but when you're disciplined, when you know you're wrong, and you still you get your whooping, you might be mad, then you come lay back on your mom's lap, or dad take you to get ice cream or whatever. It's just it hurts. I tell them, I was like, oh, you think I like whooping kids? I can find a million other things to do than to fuss at kids or pop you or do whatever. We could be friends. All we got is it's easy to get along. So we'll be in Ruth next week. And that's a beautiful story in itself. I was listening to it. I listen to my Bible, then I read it, then I listen to it again to see if it's something that I hear that I didn't see. And a wonderful story of redemption, loss, all of that stuff. What's This book is not broken up into books. It's a whole story. It's an entire in entirety, not broken up, and that's what we have to remember too when we're looking at this book and when we're reading this book, that it is a complete story from beginning to end. We got bits and pieces that we have to plug and put back together because of transliteration and translation and by books being taken out. But when you start putting the pieces back together to the puzzle, it's a beautiful story, and it's a book written to us about how to operate in this realm. And a lot of the times, the good, the bad, and the ugly are all here. He doesn't leave that out. And so we have to remember that when we're thinking about our lives and our story and where we're coming from and how we, at some point, how we all come back together with all that's gone, with all that's happened and what goes on. And it's a love story too, because even from the beginning we look at, oh God, maybe kick them out the garden, but no, it's a love story. Because if I love you, I don't want you to hurt yourself. If I love you, I don't want you to corrupt and offend and not hurt other people either. So thank you, ladies.